17 signed a paper that called it conspiracy theory, the idea that the virus could have originated in the lab. Do you think words like conspiracy theory should be in a scientific paper?
Senator, I never used that word when I was referring to it. You're distorting virtually everything.
Did you communicate with the 5 scientists who wrote the opinion piece in Nature where they were describing, oh, there's no way this could have come from the lab?
That was not me.
One of the many fiery Senate hearing exchanges between Senator Rand Paul and Dr. Anthony Fauci. And back with us now, again, is Senator Paul, author of the new book, Deception, the Great COVID Cover-Up. All right, so Senator, obviously we're watching there one of your many exchanges with Anthony Fauci over the years. Let me ask you a big picture question about Anthony Fauci. You know, to many, he's become a true villain, particularly to many on the right. Is it not possible that people can disagree with Anthony Fauci, right? That he made mistakes, but that he still was trying to do what was best for the country as opposed to being a sort of national villain?
I think the original debate is still open to declaring, what his intentions were. So the idea is whether or not gain-of-function research, the knowledge with it is worth the risk of a pandemic. In 2012, Anthony Fauci responds and says, sure, a scientist could get bitten, a pandemic could start, but the knowledge will be worth the risk. That is a judgment error, and that doesn't make him evil. I think it's a terrible, terrible judgment, one of the worst mistakes in modern medical history or public health, that he allowed this research to go on in a totalitarian government under less significant safety protocols than we have in our country, and that he allowed it to bypass the safety committee that should have reviewed it. All that's terrible judgment, doesn't make him evil. When you look at the cover-up, though, I'm a little bit less forgiving, because from early January, he knew that he had funded Wuhan. The first email exchanges he has with his assistants are them showing him the papers that had been funded by him and approved by his agency, and them getting to know, oh my goodness, this is a big deal. In private, all of the virologists say it came from the lab. Within 3 days of that meeting, February 4th, he's commissioned and directed them to do a paper called Proximal Origins that gets published in Nature. In that, they say that the virus is absolutely, unquestionably not from a lab. He then quotes this from the White House. This is evidence that he is covering his tracks, and I don't think that that's noble or can be condoned, because he's trying to escape culpability for the millions of people who died from this virus, and it was because of his bad judgment.
But
his
there's no connection.
Intentions bad, his original intentions may have been pure, but the cover-up is something that is wrong and cannot be condoned.
So you believe that any of the officials who've investigated this, who believe it's more likely that it didn't come from a lab, are corrupt, that it's not a legitimate position to take, that people believe strongly, and a lot of people believe, right, that it didn't come from a lab, as you believe?
You have to realize that the people intimately involved in this, Peter Daszak runs EcoHealth Alliance.
Yeah.
When the WHO is going to initiate their initial investigation in 2020, the U.S. government recommends 3 different officials to go over there. They're denied and they accept Peter Daszak. But who is Peter Daszak? He's the guy who collected all the NIH money and was working in conjunction, both paying himself, but also paying the Wuhan lab. He could not be objective in this because he had funded the lab.
But he's not the only one. I mean, there are many
One other
people.
aspect, though, if you're talking about whether people can be telling the truth.
Yeah.
There's a letter by 22 scientists to Lancet in April of 2020. Once again, Peter Daszak organizes the letter, even though he's the funder of the lab. And there's a great illuminating email between Peter Daszak and the scientist Ralph Barrick and UNC. That's another gain-of-function research intimately involved in this research in Wuhan. He says to Ralph, or Ralph says to him, maybe I shouldn't sign. We want to keep up the appearance that this is some sort of independent project by scientists. But there were 4 or 5 people of the 22 who did not disclose. And this is a fundamental thing. If you write for scientific journals, you have to disclose your conflicts of interest. They didn't. And Lancet finally found out about it a year later and commissioned an investigation of this. But there was people in cahoots. There's one of the key scientists who in private says that the virus looks like it came from the lab, but in public says the opposite. One of the key authors that Fauci commissions received a $9 million grant in May of 2020. There's a lot here that doesn't meet the eye.
It may be, but it also seems to me that again, because I read a bunch of the journal reports about this stuff, and it did seem to me it was evolving over time, that people were taking, the lab leak theory more seriously as time went on. And yet, even after that point, there are still, in my view, well-meaning, well-intentioned people who simply don't agree with you. And it seems like you're taking the position that anyone who doesn't agree with you about this is corrupt.
I'm not casting aspersions on every scientist who believes that it came from the animal kingdom. So the scientific evidence, people can refute it, but we do need to question whether or not people had a financial stake or were financially rewarded for their position, and they should be excluded from the examination.
Well, that's a separate issue. That's a separate issue. Senator Rand Paul, the name of the book is Deception, the Great COVID Cover-Up. Thanks very much for coming on the program. Appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you for watching. Go to newsnationnow.com to find NewsNation on your cable provider. And don't forget to click the red subscribe button below to get more of NewsNation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.